Hey guys, so I'm sitting on the back porch today because, quite honestly, the weather is awesome. I'm sure you've noticed. Hopefully, you haven't had to be inside all day because this is like the cool weather that we've all been waiting for. It's here. And I actually thought that might really connect to what I wanted to talk about as we get ready to go to the next passage of Genesis and leave the passage that we talked about last week. You know, as you think about the 4 days that we've talked about through creation so far, the things that God put specific names to, if you read through these days, are things that He wanted to be sure that His people understood lived totally outside of His control. So we're going to learn this week. We do have a responsibility to subdue the earth, to have dominion over things. That is for sure part of our responsibility. But you and I both know there are things we just have no control over, and there's really three of those that I think the writer of Genesis, well, Moses, wanted us to get a feel for what lived outside of our control. And the first is the weather. Well, we all know that the weather exists outside of our control, and it really doesn't matter how frustrated we get about the fact that fall just doesn't seem to be coming. It's just not going to come until the Lord deems fit for it to come. And it was important even for Israel to understand that the weather exists outside of control of the people, because they were tempted to worship a god named Baal who they thought they could manipulate into causing rain. So you remember this really famous story with Elijah and the prophets of Baal, and the prophets of Baal kept trying to get it to bring the fire up, but Elijah prayed and God consumed the offering. So you've got this weather that exists outside of control. The second is time. God called day day, He called night night. Um, and it's to help us remember that God sets the days in motion. He controls time. Most of us feel like our lives are completely out of control because we feel so busy, so overloaded with things that we have to do that I don't have time is probably second in the list of things most commonly said, only to I'm just so busy. But we need to be reminded from time to time, if you will, that God is the one who sets the days and seasons. He's the one who's in control of time. And finally, the third one, which is probably not doesn't seem as practical to us, sort of, is agriculture. You know, God brought forth vegetation. So when you read the story of God creating the earth, He created the earth, and it says, and God from the earth brought forth vegetation. You know, the Israelites needed to be reminded that it was God that makes the grass grow. I'm sitting out here and looking at my garden that's completely overrun, and the kudzu that I talked about the other week in the sermon that's completely overrun my fence, and I need to be reminded from time to time that it's God that makes these things grow. It's not me. When I grow a garden and the plants come up, I do certain things to make them come up for sure, but it's God who's in control of His planet doing His work. Now, the way those things apply to us now, if we're thinking about a God who's in control of time, then we need to dedicate the time that we've been given to God. So I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is even in the course of our day, you know, the reality is we spend most of our day at work, doing something that's work related. Well, even that time it should be used to be dedicated to God, and it's a good thing for us to use work and time at the same time to dedicate that to the Lord. So you work not simply so you can provide for your family, or not simply so that you can raise your kids, stay-at-home moms, but you work so that God will be glorified through the time that you're spending. Weather, you know, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but for us to rest in God's goodness, even in the midst of every day-to-day circumstances, the little things that do exist outside of our control, because we're not in control of anything, to be reminded of that. And finally, we think about the way that God does cause the things around us to happen, whether it be the grass that grows or the birds that chirp or the cool days that come. These are all things that have been given as a gift from God so that we might see His glory and be reminded of the fact that we're not in control really of anything, whether it be the things that we think we can control or the things that we are fully aware exist outside of our control. God calls us to rest in Him and His goodness. So my prayer for you guys this week is that you will have spent your week resting in His goodness. And as we get ready to talk this coming Sunday, it's going to be a real special Sunday. I hope you guys can make it. I would love for you to be there. I'm really excited about all the things that are happening this week. This is going to be a unique Sunday in the life of our church, and we're going to talk in very particularly about the way that God has created man to accomplish a certain number of purposes, a certain amount of things in this world, and the things that we know that God has called us to do. So I hope that you'll be here with us on Sunday morning, 10 o'clock Sunday school, going through the book of Hebrews if you're in the adult class. The kiddos have various things that they're going to be doing. Senior adults working on a different book of the Bible. But then that's at 10 o'clock is Sunday school, and then 11 o'clock is our worship time together. So I hope that you'll join us, but I'd love to just pray for you real quick. Thank you guys for listening. Let's pray. Father, thank you for today and for the fact that you bring us cool weather so that we might be reminded of your goodness. But Lord, you are good, even in the midst of the hottest days and the hardest seasons. And so, Lord, I pray that as we move through the rest of our week, as we get ready to go into a weekend, Lord, I pray that you would help us to see every moment as being moments given so that we might glorify your name. Help us to work well and hard, whether it be at home or at work, to bring glory to you and to tell others about your son, Jesus. And we pray this all in his name. All right, guys. See you Sunday.